Alright guys, today we're talking about three products from Manley Laboratories out of Chino, California. Cool company, founded in the 80s, working out of the VTL factory, which is another cool tube brand. Went on in like the 90s to get their own space with machine shops, engraving, transformer wiring. Still core to what they do today. They're really big on like making their own parts where possible, like their Teflon RCA plugs and stuff. So I'm part of their ethos. They do a lot of pro gear. These represent more home hi-fi or consumer grade stuff, but they do a lot of pro gear stuff, studio stuff, which I think informs their ethos to be like really simple, direct, not a lot of like the newfangled whiz-bang feature, but just really high quality circuits that perform and are built to last and are durable and serviceable and all the things that kind of the industry would care about. And that stuff trickles down, and you know they're very prideful that like this is not like bloated, tubey sounding gear. They love tubes, but they think that's because they offer a lot of headroom when designed in the proper circuit, that they can be very linear, that they can behave really in ways that certain solid state components can't match. So their ethos is great, their product is great, and I want to talk about these three pieces which sort of represent their entry level. I'll air quote that because it's not cheap stuff. Their entry level sort of components. So I don't know, I picked this up I guess because I was getting bored, and you guys are probably getting bored, but over here is the Chinook. That's their phono stage, their more affordable phono stage. This is the Jumbo Shrimp, it's their more affordable preamp, and this is the Mahi, one of the Mahi Mahi monoblocks, which is kind of one of their more affordable power amps. So these three sort of, if you're an analog person, this could be basically your chain from your record player to your speakers, all Manley all the time. There's other options from Manley, and there's like an integrated we'll talk about in a sec, but this sort of represents the kind of, like I said, the quote-unquote entry-level set of stuff. So let's break it down. All right, let's begin with the Chinook, which is based on Manley's much more expensive $10,000 Steelhead. This is only $3,200, so a bargain. This phono stage has received a ton of positive feedback from lots of folks, including very recently from Twitter machines. So still a very relevant piece, even though it's been in production for quite a while. It's had some minor updates. There is like a special edition Mark II, which I think is maybe only available through Upscale Audio, where they did like they sort of pick the tubes inside and got some additional variability in terms of the gain. But anyway, we'll get to that in a sec. So unit's very simple. There's an on-off switch. It's a little bit confusing because this is what the mute button looks like on the Jumbo Shrimp. This is some of the kind of funny, quirky stuff you get with these guys. And then on the back side, a little more interface. You got your phono in coming off your turntable, your ground wire, and then your output. So very simple. As you can see, it's single-ended. It's not a balanced output. And then over here, you've got a bunch of variables to set your to adjust your input resistive and your capacitance loading. And you've got like, I think it's like 31 possible variations here. Anyway, it's a lot to mess with. You can look to the manufacturer of your cartridge in most cases to figure out what the starting point should be, and then sort of finagle from there to see what you like. On the inside, you've got some more switches, which is kind of annoying because you would need to remove this cover, which is not the end of the world. It's 4 to 8 screws, with the Phillips head, so very, very easy to service. But in there, you've got set of switches that basically lets you go from 45 dB gain for your moving magnet to 60 dB gain, or in the case of the kind of newer rev of this, the special edition Mark II, which is I think just done in partnership with Upscale Audio, you get 4 settings, 45 and 50 for moving magnet and 60 and 65 for moving coil. So just a bit more adjustability, but annoying because it's inside the chassis, and if you're like me and you like to swap cartridges on a relatively frequent basis, your dip switches are in the back and your other switches are inside and remove a cover, so not the most sort of user friendly in that regard. But if you're going to stick to one cartridge and only swap on occasion, then fine, and that's what a lot of folks do, right, is they find a cartridge they like and they leave it on their turntable once they get it all dialed in. like I said, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this because there have been so many reviews on it. So check the other ones out. I'll just say from my experience, this thing sounds awesome. And there are 4 sets of 6922s inside, 2 for the input, 2 for the output in a white flower configuration, which I don't know what that means, but Manley claims that basically it means that it's got very low impedance and very high current. So it's just a very durable signal that can drive a lot of things without issues. Great. But what I found is in tube rolling, you can tube roll the input stage, and that is going to give you most impact over the flavor of the sound. So if you want it smoother, if you want it fuller, if you want it crisper, if you want more air, that's just about sort of dialing in, the many vintage and current stock 6922 options, which are plentiful and well documented on the internet and a lot of fun. But yeah, I think it sounds really great. I'd had maybe 3 or 4 other tube phono stages before this, and this one has that perfect balance for me of like detail and sort of capability combined with smoothness and fluidity that you sort of want from tubes. So you're not really sacrificing the quality of the sound signature. You're only getting that additional analog beauty that you can get from a really well-designed tube circuit. So this guy will then plug into our jumbo shrimp. Let's look at him. All right, so now we're really getting into like full-on Manley territory as I think about it. Like, look at this. Just look at the giant volume knob. I love this thing. And all these knobs are just great and tactile and enjoyable and a balance. You don't see balance anymore. Actually, super helpful. I'll just wipe this off. Sorry, guys. And then you have your big on-off guy over here. Yeah, so here's the mute button. Fun. Handy, but also just kind of funny when you have these 2 components sitting next to each other that those buttons do such completely different things. Good knob feel. So, Jumbo Shrimp. This guy, I want to say the MSRP is $5,000-ish. So not a spendy, a spendy preamp. And it's got this kind of like sort of weighty pro gear stuff. Like, look at these feet. They're kind of funny, but they do a great job. And there's 3 of them mounted so that you don't get any rocking back and forth. Like I said, this is all single-ended design. Sorry, it's going to be upside down. All right, fine, I'll turn it around. This is all single-ended design, so you're getting 5 inputs, which is generous. You've got record out, and then you've got 2 sets of main outs, which is kind of cool if you wanted to drive a sub, or if you had 2 sets of power amps, which I have had at different times, where I had like both a solid state side of the house and a tube side of the house. So handy in that regard. Oh gosh, there's some heavy metal in there, my friends. The Manley folks put some nice heavy stuff in there. So this thing is very powerful. Like of the preamps I've tried, it's definitely got enough juice to pretty much drive anything down the line from it. So plenty of gain. It's got a soulful sort of like great dynamic sound. It's a fun sound. It's an energetic preamp. I think this is the preamp that sort of made me go, oh, preamps really, really matter. They're not just about like volume attenuation, right? Like people like passive pre so that they get the pre out of the way. And I get that philosophy, but this is a pre that makes everything sound the way I want it to. So in this case, get the pre in the way. That's not true of all. Like a lot of pre's are very much about like, how can we be as nothing as possible? And so I guess there's just different strategies like everything. It's about synergy of components, but driving some relatively neutral solid state power amps with something like this that adds that flavor and soul and allows you to tube roll so you can sort of continue to fine tune it is really, really beautiful in my mind. It's 1287s, I think, so you've got just a ton of options in terms of shaping that signal. Lots to choose from, both again in new and new old stock or old stock. This is the remote. It is hilarious. It looks like you're going to turn on a TV in the 60s or something. It has two buttons, volume up and volume down. It is giant and chunky because it is not infrared, it is RF, which is awesome. Because pretty much anywhere in your house this thing will work. You do not need to have a line of sight. And I love that. Even though it's just goofy as heck, it's awesome, you know? I went back to a preamp that has infrared on it after using this, and I was like, it's so finicky. You have to find the special angle. It's just really annoying. And like I said, it's a pleasure to interface with this thing. The volume's great. All the knobs feel really nice. All these little plates light up. They're backlit when it's on, which is how you know the unit's on. And the mute button is pretty handy because you can just jam on it real quick when somebody's yelling to you from around the house. So yeah, like I said, it's all full pleasure to use. Very adjustable in terms of tube rolling, and just a really nice solid piece that, you know, helps you understand why preamps matter. And then this is going to drive into our power amps. Okay. And last but not least, at least not in terms of weight especially, are this adorable pair of monoblocks named the Mahi, or the Mahi Mahi. See, they do a fish name thing, if you hadn't picked up on that yet. Again, they're just, it's a cute brand. They just have some play. They have some life. They're humans, and I like that. It's not the YJ642Z, you know, it's the Mahi. So these are cool. So this is, like I said, these are monoblocks, pretty obvious. And each one is driven by 4 EL34s, and push-pull configuration, 4 little baby power tubes that sound great. I use EL34s in... All right, hold on. And that brings us to, last but not least, these adorable monoblocks. These are the Mahi, or Mahi Mahi. There's a fish theme going on here if you hadn't picked up on that already. These are driven by and last but not least, we come to this adorable pair of power monoblocks, the Mahi, or the Mahi Mahi. Since there's 2 of them, there's a fish theme going on here if you hadn't picked up on that. Now you know these are based on 4, boop, 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 count them in the back here, 4 EL84 power tubes. I like this tube a lot. I think it's an underloved tube. Manley likes it as well. They're in my Deckware Taboo. They're in my LTA Z10E. They're all over the place, but they're sort of unsung. Here they're in a push-pull configuration with, like I said, 4 per channel, which will get you, I think, something around 20 watts in triode mode, or like close to 40 in ultralinear. And this is one of them, brings you immediately to one of the really cool features of this, is that you can, trying to get that a little closer so you can see, you can configure on the fly. Oops, that's not the right side. You can configure on the try whether you want to run this in triode or ultralinear. Unsurprisingly, triode gets you a little smoother, more fluid kind of experience in ultralinear. Crisps things up, tightens up the bass, makes things a little bit more sort of punchy and dynamic, and maybe leans them out a little bit, to just be very generalist about it. On the other side, as I tried to show you before, you can determine if you want to introduce more or less feedback into the circuit, which is super cool. Again, you're gonna sort of push between tighter and more clarity to something that's smoother and sort of richer. So between these, you know, 3 on this side and 2 on this side settings, you can really sort of dial in the profile of this, and that's before you even start tube rolling. So yeah, you've got I think it's a 12 AT7 in the front. This is your inbound. This is your drive tube. What is this guy? 13B H7A. I'm less familiar with this tube. I haven't messed with it because I just don't have a bunch on hand to play with, but certainly did play with the front end. And yes, you can shape this thing. And I think I ended up with some PS Vane ones in here that have a real tight crispness because I thought that balanced everything out really well for the speakers and everything else that I was using. But all of this is just a ton of power reserve, which is super cool. Like when you turn these things off at the back, the music plays for another like 15-20 seconds because there's just so much power cached on hand, which is great because it just allows you to deal with the variability of the music and being able to drive speakers that require a bit more or need a push at a certain point. Around the backside you got your power switch, one input per side, obviously single-ended again, nice speaker binding point, your fuse. You will notice all these little holes around. These are manually biased, which sounds like, oh my god, what year is it? I gotta manually bias something? Can I even do that? They send you a multimeter and instructions. It's super simple. You put one thing in your ground, you got a thing here, you check the reading, there's a little trim pot, they give you a little tool to get down to the trim pot. You do it, it takes like 3 minutes. And they would argue that it makes the circuit like simpler and cleaner, which is again part of their ethos, which is nice, and that some people actually want to run bias slightly differently, which not me, but cool. So anyway, these are super awesome. I drove a ton of speakers with these things. They gave me no problems at any turn, and mostly just sounded really great. And having that flexibility to sort of dial in between triode and ultralinear and how much feedback you want, and then being able to play with tubes, it's like these things can sound like very different amps, from things that are like borderline sort of tight powerful drive of solid state to like dreamy sweet tubiness and kind of everything in between. So it kind of comes down to your taste and sort of what makes sense with the speakers you're driving at a given time. I did like these Gentle X for the EL84s. I've ran those previously and had pretty good luck with them. Buying 2 sets of quads is not the cheapest thing, so that's that's kind of a bummer. But these are durable little tubes. I haven't run through any of them on any of my amps ever yet, so I think it's a good investment, and it lasts. Back little faceplates will light up just as on the other gear, so it makes for a real nice set. And these come with their own little spiky feet standoff, so those will scratch your furniture. Be careful. They're not like crazy scratchy, but they are pretty pointy. So that's the tour around the quote-unquote entry level, something like 15 grand all in. Manley Laboratories hi-fi offering separates components. They do make a something called the Stingray, which is basically like if you button these two together into a crazy trapezoidal thing. They just released a new one, which looks pretty cool. I think it's like 8.5 grand, but it's got both the selection knob and the volume knob, I think, are controllable from the remote, if I'm not wrong. I might be wrong. And I think it might have Bluetooth on it. It's got like a headphone plug, so it's pretty cool. It looks really interesting. What you wouldn't get as compared to what we were looking at is the preamp stage from the Jumbo Shrimp is obviously not included in that package, so you don't get that chance to sort of add that beauty and flavor in there. But I haven't compared them, so I really couldn't tell you. But if you were looking at a Manley system, I think you would do yourself a favor to look at that as well. And then up from here, there's bigger and bigger monoblocks based on different tubes. From the Jumbo Shrimp, you can go up to wasn't that Neo Classic? There's like a 300B based preamp. So Manley's got a bunch of other cool stuff that gets pretty spendy pretty quick. The Steelhead, which is the other big phono stage, does also have one line in as well, so it can be used as a preamp if you mostly care about vinyl and just want to go all in. So Manley, dig it, check it out. Until next time, this is Signcraft signing out.